Yes, guys, and welcome back to the WM32 Football Podcast. It has been a while, hasn't it? Have you missed us? Of course you have, but guess what? We're back. And we are back with a very, very special episode today. So I've been joined by Nelson today, and between me and him, we are going to go through what we feel is an underrated Premier League 11. So how it will work is that me and Nelson have both picked a team and, you know, a little bit of a squad of players as well, who we feel are underrated amongst the Premier League at the moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through our teams and almost justify why we feel that they should be in this particular team. So Nelson, I'm going to come straight over to you then with your team. So obviously we're going to need a goalkeeper. I would perhaps say that there's a few contenders in there, but yeah, just run us through your team and who you've gone with in goal.
No worries. First of all, glad to be here. Definitely missed being on this podcast, but it was a tough choice because I went through all the rosters throughout the league and in the league and picked the players that I felt were underrated first and foremost, and then from there I created my 18 squad. So my starting 11, and then I obviously put a bench because I felt as though these players shouldn't have been left out. I decided to go with 4-2-3-1 formation. Okay, and the goalkeeping choice was really hard because there were three keepers that I had in mind. I had Nick Pope, I had Bernd Leno, and I had Emiliano Martinez. So I decided at the end, which might not be a surprise to you knowing who you know I support, I went with Bernd Leno. Okay, Bernd Leno, Arsenal keeper. I just feel like he doesn't get as much respect as he does. And yes, we know that with the injury that he suffered last season, Martinez came in and proved as well why he was a very underrated keeper as well. But I think people forget that before Martinez came in, Leno actually saved Arsenal a lot of points. It was basically between him and Aubameyang for player of the season. Aubameyang scored the goals to obviously keep basically Arsenal from a relegation battle. And then you had Leno, who saved us from a relegation battle as well. Like, he saved us a lot of points.
You have no idea how ironic that sounds right now.
I know. I know. Like, the fact that, you know, Arsenal right now are currently going through one. But last season, I think Bernd Leno really showcased why. But I still don't think he gets enough respect, especially from our own fan base. I think him and Martinez are two different keepers. But Leno has a strength. I think he's a great shot stopper of the ball. I think that's one of his great strengths. So in goal, I went with Bernd Leno. So yeah, I'll move on to my right back.
Yeah.
My right back. I didn't have much right backs to choose from actually, but the one that I went forward with is Luke Ayling from Leeds United. I really love this, like, seeing, you know, the if anybody hasn't seen a Leeds United documentary, go check it out on Amazon Prime. That was great. I got to know a bit more of the Leeds squad, but Luke Ayling, having seen him play under Bielsa, is just rampant. Like, obviously we know that goal he scored, looking like Robin van Persie, you know, showing off his ponytail. But he's got quality, runs up and down, can find a good cross in as well, and works hard for the team. So, like, I had little to choose from when it came to right back, but I think Luke Ayling really deserved to be there, and I think he's very underrated in the league. So I went with Luke Ayling. I think you're really impressed with my decision to go.
That's a great shout. I mean, anybody that knows me particularly knows that I have quite a strong feeling towards El Loco, Marcelo Bielsa. I'm absolutely fascinated by the guy. As a coach, like, I am just so fast. Like, the way that he has set Leeds up as a team. Bearing in mind, when he took over at Leeds, Bielsa, he took over a side that were mid-table in the Championship and underachieving every single year. Yeah. You know, that would push and have a good run and get into that top six, but ultimately would fade away. Hence the song Leeds are falling apart again. But he's turned, players into Premier League players. And I think Luke Ayling is certainly one of those, because I think at the time, Luke Ayling was a steady Championship player. You look at what he's done to Calvin Phillips. The work that Bielsa's done with him, has put Phillips in the England squad. And I'm absolutely, again, just fascinated by how he works, the whole thing of this man-to-man marking thing defensively. I remember the first game of the season, Leeds-Liverpool, and Mane's over on the opposite wing, and who's next to him, like marking him? Luke Ayling. Now, usually you would just say that if that player moves inside or moves away from you, just pass him on to that next person. But Bielsa's just like, no, I need to have this man-to-man +1 thing going down. So I don't know if anybody watched Leeds against Burnley, but actually what Bielsa did, which I think was quite clever, was he dropped Calvin Phillips into a back three, just to make sure that he had that spare man always. And I think it's actually been a bit of a trait from Bielsa when Leeds have come up against sides that have played with a front two. He's often dropped Phillips in to be that third centre back. But yeah, no, Luke Ayling under Bielsa's just been fantastic.
Fantastic.
Centre halves, talk to me.
Cool. So my centre halves, first centre half I went with was somebody who has been a mainstay in the Brighton side and has, I think, done a very good job for the defence. And the fact that they're still in the league since I think they've been promoted, I think it's a testament to who he is as a defender. So I went with Lewis Dunk. I think he's very underrated. I actually thought at one point he should have got an England call-up, but that's just my opinion. But I think he does his job very well. I mean, I think he's captain of the club, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So to lead the team, I think he's one of the important pieces in that Brighton side. Obviously, their manager as well. I think things are looking up for them. I think they're slowly creeping. I think people are sleeping on Brighton at the moment. And Dunk is one of the reasons why they've been as good as they have been to stay in the league. But obviously, we know that for them to get better, they need to improve their quality. But so I went with Lewis Dunk for my first centre half. Second centre half is another English centre back who actually got a recent call up. My man Tyrone Mings. That's my guy, man. The Dresden thing. Anyways, enough about the Dresden thing. But he is, I think as well, like for you to distract Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang on a corner for your team to score a goal, like that's a skill that I think people. I'm joking, but no, he's a really good defender. I think again he does his job. Leads the Villa backline very well. I can't remember who his centre back partner is, but I felt like I also needed a left centre back in there for my information. So him being on the left side, being left footed, also helps the balance of the squad. So I went with Tyrone Mings. So Mings and Dunk are my centre back pairing.
Not bad.
Left back. So to complete the back four,
I
went with somebody that I think you would like this decision. He runs up and down and he's immense. And he is actually a former Premier League title winner. And that is Jeffrey Schlupp.
Oh, this guy gives me nightmares. This guy, always, I don't know what it is, but he just turns up against Tottenham. I don't I don't get why. Like I know that like Tottenham have this thing of like when we play and we come up against a goalkeeper who perhaps hasn't played for ages or, is in their mid-30s and, having a bit of a bad spell. They could play against Tottenham and they turn into like, if it's a goalkeeper, they turn into prime Buffon or Casillas. Like Jeff Schlupp turns into like prime Roberto Carlos or something. Like he always plays well against us. He's annoying, which is really frustrating for me because I know a few people that know Jeff really, really well. And stuff like that. So sorry, Jeff, but you do frustrate me.
He's a really good player. I was really impressed. The first time I noticed him was actually when Leicester won the league, and I was really impressed with him that year as well. But also Palace, he's obviously on the left back. He's a left back, so just just like, I think him and Luke Ayling, imagine them both in the same team, just running up, attacking fullbacks up and down, and they both offer an attacking presence. And Schlotter's got a shot on him as well. Like, he can offer that attacking threat. Because I think at times he can play further up as a winger as well. So he offers that too. So just having that versatility as well on that left side to play further up. But he's also a good defender. I think over the years, as he's grown into the Premier League, got that experience, he's obviously become a competent defender. Wouldn't say the best, but he does the left back job very well. So I'll put Jeffrey Schlupp to complete our back four. So I think you're impressed with that, because I can see
not bad to me.
Yeah. So I went 2 in the middle, 2 CDMs. These are quite similar, but one of them is more of a box-to-box that can offer an attacking threat going forward. So the first centre-back I went to is my Niger brother, Wilfred Ndidi. I went with Wilfred Ndidi because he's rated, but Wilfred Ndidi is a very good centre defensive. You could see that Leicester, especially last season when they fell out the top 4, I felt like that really showed his importance to the squad. When he was out of the squad, they lost a lot of points, and obviously we saw what happened. They ended up finished outside of the Champions League spots. He does, we know that Leicester tried really hard to replace N'Golo Kante, and I think they found that in Ndidi. Does all the scrappy work, gives it to the creative players, and just kind of sits back, does his job. So I went with Wilfred Ndidi as my first defensive mid. His partner in midfield can also play defensive mid, but it's the fact that his energy is relentless, and he's shown it this season, with his, you could argue, big money move to Everton. But I went with Abdoulaye Doucouré. That is my brother. Doucouré is an absolute baller. He's got a bit of a technical side of him as well. People actually don't see that much in him, but I think he's very good technically. I mentioned about him just being box to box, relentless stamina. We're talking relentless. So first time I noticed him was at Watford, obviously, before he made his move to Everton. And you could tell that he would, the fact that he was linked with all these big moves to United and Arsenal, people would probably question why, but then you actually see his performances and see that he was very consistent for that Watford side. And now he's doing that for Everton now. So that midfield as well of him, Allen and Rodriguez, Andre Gomez, don't get me started. But Doucouré, I think, deserved to be in that squad, and I think he's very underrated amongst the general population fan base. So those are my 2, in the offensive mid. So I'm quite happy with that.
Lining up to be a good team so far, Nelson. You've done well. I can see the level of research that has taken place here.
I've done my research, man. So we got the 3 behind the striker. Okay, we've got our left mid, our cam, and our right mid. So I'm so happy that this right mid justifies my spot after his goal yesterday against Chelsea. And I went with Anwar El Ghazi. El Ghazi, oh my gosh, I thought at one point he was Moroccan, but I checked his nationality to check that he plays for Dutch, and I was like, what? I was so confused. But Anwar El Ghazi for that Villa side has been tremendous since they've been promoted. I don't know regarding his goal contribution since they've got promoted, but I know he helps a lot in terms of how they build up their attacking play. And I think he's a very good winger. I think he's only just going to get better. And I think he's roughly 25, 26 years old. So there's always room for improvement. And I think with that Villa side that he's in right now, with their options, I don't know who is recruitment or who's in charge of recruitment over there, but their recruitment has been spot on this summer. Barkley, Traore, Ollie Watkins, let's not forget him. So I think he's just going to improve in that Villa side. And I think he can also get a few goals for you, which is what you need nowadays in a winger. And I think he can track back, do his defensive duties as well. So I put Anwar El Ghazi as my right mid.
Nice.
For my cam in the middle, the little number 10. This one was tough because I had a few. I had Yuri Tillemans, but I think Tillemans has now crossed that line of actually being rated. I think he was underrated at a point, but I think he's now crossed that line where people are like, yeah, he's a baller. So my cam that I went with, you know, at one point he'll probably be a Geordie in his lifetime, but Miguel Almiron. I went with Miguel Almiron. I like him. His move was questionable because obviously if you're, joining from an MLS side, which MLS we know doesn't have a lot of quality, it's known for the retirement league for those players who just look to retire. I think MLS has some quality ballers, but he came in and the way he's played since he's joined, I think I think Newcastle have lacked something like that. I'm not going to compare him too much to Hatem Ben Arfa because Ben Arfa is on another different level. But just having that creativity, which they've lacked from, I think, for a very long time. Like, Shelvey can do it from deep, but just having somebody nearer to that striker, I think I went with Miguel Almiron because he provides the goals and assists. And I think he works really well with Callum Wilson as well. I've seen a lot of Newcastle's games, and I think that partnership with Wilson, Joe Linton, who's been doing well as well for Newcastle. So my number 10, I went with Miguel Almiron. So he's done very good since he's joined the Newcastle club. So yeah, that's my attacking mid. My left mid, this was the one that I already had. He was guaranteed a spot in my starting lineup. He was guaranteed a spot. And he keeps justifying it with the way he's been balling so far, like scoring these late goals to, save points for his club. And I'm not sure if he's got called up yet, but he's due one soon. And that's Mr. Harvey Barnes for Leicester City. Harvey Barnes. Ooh. He was a definite because the way this guy, you know me, I have an affection for Son, but I think Harvey Barnes is coming up there like slowly. Like he's coming up there slowly because Harvey Barnes, like we're talking, I don't think anybody would have thought Harvey Barnes would be the player that he is right now today, especially when he first started. And I think got to give great credit to Brendan Rodgers for spotting that, when he first joined the club, because I think he's worked tremendous. I think Brendan Rodgers got the best out of him. That system they play at Leicester, he suits it perfectly. He's got a right foot shot. His left foot, oh my gosh, his left foot. Some of the goals you've seen recently with his left foot, I'm like, what? And he can offer a lot, crossing the ball, cutting inside, your little intricate plays. And I think he's versatile in the fact that he can't just play left mid. I think he can play across that attacking lineup. So that's another thing I like Harvey Barnes. And he works hard. You want somebody like that. He works hard. So Harvey Barnes, slowly, he's adding goals to his game as well, which is a plus. So that's one of the reasons why he was a definite for me. When I picked my list and I saw his name, I was like, yeah, I have to put him there. Plus, he does really well on my PES, manager mode team. So that's another reason I've got to put him there. Just putting it out there. Mr. Harvey Barnes, shout out to you. So that completes the three behind the striker for my team. The last person as well, my number 9, was a definite in the squad. I think he's close to that line, like I mentioned with Tielemans, of being rated. I think he's very close because I still think he doesn't get enough love. He's obviously currently out now with a head injury. He suffered a concussion against Arsenal. Jimenez.
Yes.
Jimenez. Raul Jimenez is an absolute baller. The fact, did he play for that Wolves team in the Championship when they got promoted?
No. So Jimenez came in Wolves' first season of the Premier League,
Wow.
but obviously Tottenham played Wolves the other night, and Wolves, I think, are a side that, a very, very good side. Don't get me wrong. Pretty much battered Tottenham for 90 minutes, really. But when you find out that Jimenez isn't playing, I think as a fan, it's a relief because he's such a threat in both boxes, I believe.
He is.
And it was a bit of a relief when you kind of go, "Oh, I'm glad he's not playing," because it causes problems. I think his hold-up play is fantastic, and actually, I wouldn't say he's lightning quick. Don't get me wrong, but he does have a good turn of pace to get away from an opponent. And I do remember last season at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, his goal, which was fantastic, and he's absolutely sat JT Japhet Tanganga on his backside. And at that point, I was there like, oh, brilliant, here we go. you know, some Wolves fans out there, you know who you are. You still remind me of that to this day. So cheers for that.
No, I completely agree with you. Hold-up play is ridiculous. And his partnership with Adama Traore, who was another person that was, creeping into my squad. But, his contribution to this Wolves team since they've come up has been nothing short of ridiculous. Like, you're right. If I didn't see Jimenez in the squad as an Arsenal fan, I'd be relieved because he works hard as well. There's just something about that South American grit. Okay, I've just remembered Mexico is not in South America. But Mexico, like those players with sort of a Latin background, they have this sort of grit that whenever they step onto the pitch. So he deserves every bit of success that he's getting right now. We wish him obviously a speedy recovery. So great! It was great news that the Premier League gave the all clear for that concussion rule. So that's a good step moving forward for the game. But yeah, that completes my starting 11. Leno in goal, Luke Ayling at right back, Lewis Dunk and Tyrone Mings in the middle, Jeffrey Schlupp at left back, Decore and Ndidi as the defensive midfielders. You got El Ghazi on the right, you got Almiron in the middle, you got Harvey, Mr. Barnes on the left, and then to complete it, we've got Raul Jimenez. I've got some subs, but we could do that at the end if that.
Do you know what, Nels? As it's you, I'll let you run through your subs.
Go on, okay. So
and if you've got a manager as well, because we're going to need a gaffer for this.
Oh,
I don't know if I put you on the spot.
Oh, you did. I think you have because that is a good shout.
Okay, run through his bench. Who's going to come on and perhaps change things for you?
Well, I've got quite an attacking, Okay, so I've got Nick Pope as my second keeper.
Yeah.
I put Luca Digne at Everton, left back. I think he's a very good baller. Someone who used to play for my club, who I still think doesn't get enough credit and is nearly France's all-time top scorer, is Giroud. Giroud is still very... I don't know why he just falls... He can never get over that line of, yeah, he's rated. He's just always there. Does a good job, has that Premier League experience. I put Ollie Watkins as well. I thought, he's a very underrated player from someone to come up from Brentford, score his 26 goals, I think 26, 27. And, for him to do that performance against Liverpool, I think people actually took notice. Okay, he's a baller. Another attacker, Shea Adams. I like Shea Adams for Southampton. Works really well.
Fun fact about Shea Adams.
Go on.
He's played in the same league as I did once upon a time.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, he played in the United Counties League, which is a league sort of based in and around mainly Northamptonshire. But yeah, he played in that league.
Man like Shea. I got Patrick Bamford as well. Another person under your, El Loco, who does really well for Leeds United. And lastly, I got Gigi Wijnaldum. I got Wijnaldum.
Okay.
I think Wijnaldum's very underrated. So that completes my subs. When you asked me regarding coach, someone did come to mind. I do not know how to pronounce his name, but he's Southampton's manager. I think he's very underrated.
Ralph Hasenhüttl.
Yeah. I will go for him as my manager to complete my squad. And I'm satisfied with that. I'm actually very happy with that.
Yeah. Very, very good, Nelson. Now, I have got a bit of a hard task and a bit of a hard act to follow. I've got a few options coming through like NSG with some of my options in some places.
Cool.
So going to go with goalkeeper. Now, I thought I had my goalkeeper set. I thought he was done. Like, right, no, this is it. But then just having a little bit of a think about it, gone and chosen another goalkeeper just because the one that I had in mind hasn't played too much of late. So in goal, I've gone with a former Arsenal shot stopper in Lucas Fabianski. This guy has been unbelievable since coming to West Ham from Swansea. Obviously, at that time with his age, a few question marks. Obviously, gone to West Ham from a side that had just been relegated. But he has proven to be worth every single penny and then some. I think he's actually saved West Ham a lot of points over the time that he's been there.
Agreed.
I do think his contract is due to run out soon, so there's a decision to be made on that. But I think if you're West Ham, you've got to try and keep him, for as long as possible until that suitable replacement goalkeeper comes in. And I think, West Ham last season struggled when he was out the side. I think they struggled massively, but then I don't know if anybody saw Roberto play at West Ham before signing him, but they were clearly on something because he's up there with probably one of the worst goalkeepers I think I've ever seen in the Premier League. It was awful, Roberto. And it was almost that we can't wait to get Fabianski back in our side and back fit. So, yeah, Fabianski just edges it for me. But I do want to give a big shout out to Tom Heaton.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he has been a very, very solid goalkeeper. Did very, very well at Burnley in his time there. Fantastic shot stopper. Fairly decent with his feet as well, which I don't think too many people notice. But yeah, I just went with Fabianski because obviously Heaton has had that big injury. And then obviously they've recruited Emi Martinez of Aston Villa, so it doesn't look like anytime soon that Heaton will be getting back into that Aston Villa squad or in that Aston Villa team. So yeah, Fabianski just picks Tom Heaton, but I definitely wanted to give a big shout out to Tom Heaton because I think he's a fantastic goalkeeper as well. And I think he's been a bit unlucky at times not to play for England.
Agreed.
Especially at the time he was getting in the England squads. I don't think there was really that standout goalkeeper. So I think he may feel a little bit hard done by in that respect. Listen, do I think Tom Heaton would have been England's number one for a sustained period of time? Probably not, but maybe a handful of caps I think would have been justifiable for him.
Can we just, sorry to interrupt, Rez, can we just shout out the crop of England keepers, that we've got right now? And Pope, Heaton, Henderson, Dean Henderson. You got a good little crop there.
Yeah, so... no, definitely. I think long term Henderson will probably be the number one. But again, he's got to try and force his way into the United team, which is going to be difficult when you've got De Gea, who's been there for so long, and I think over a sustained period of time has been United's best player probably until fairly recent. And it looks like Bruno's taken that title and that mantra since he's come in. Right, moving on to my back four. I've gone with a 4-3-3 today, but it could quite easily be a 4-2-3-1 as well. So yeah, right back again. Got a couple of options here, but I'm going to go with this particular player. He's done very, very well since coming into the team that he plays for. Come up from the lower leagues and was a very, very sort of unknown quantity to many at that time. And his versatility to play anywhere across the back line, I think, helps. And that is James Justin at Leicester.
Oh, Mr. Justin.
I think he's very, very underrated.
Yes.
And I think, unfortunately for him, from an England perspective, there's so many right backs ahead of him. I've seen him play for the 21s. He actually played left wing back when I went to see him for the 21s. But he was outstanding there, and then just was able to slot in at left back. And again, he was fantastic. And I think, since he's come into that Leicester side, I know it's been unfortunate that Ricardo's been injured, but do you know what? I don't think he's looked out of place, and I don't think he's actually weakened Leicester, which I think is a massive, massive credit. Obviously, coming from Luton to Leicester for £4 million. It's always a bit of a strange one when clubs sign players from the lower leagues for what could arguably be quite a bit of money at that particular time. And yeah, I think he's just slotted in brilliantly, and yeah, I think he deserves a spot. I think he's very, very underrated. Like I say, can play anywhere across the back line. I think he's helped Leicester a lot as well in terms of when they played with the back three, because he's filled in as that right-sided centre-back. and allowed Albrighton to almost be that wing back. But yeah, no, I really like James Justin, so he gets in there for me. Centre halves again, difficult one. I'm gonna go with this particular player. Hasn't played much recently, I believe, due to injury, but since making a free transfer across London, I think he's been probably one of the most underrated defenders in the Premier League, and that is Gary Cahill. I think his influence at Palace has been nothing short of superb.
Yeah.
And actually, I think Palace have missed him a lot, and I don't think it's any coincidence that he's been out of the side recently, and Palace haven't had the best run of form and have looked a little bit shaky defensively. I know Koyate's almost dropped in to play there, and usually he's a defensive midfield player, Koyate. But yeah, I think Palace are desperately missing Gary Cahill. You could argue that when Chelsea let him go, was that kind of the end of Gary Cahill? Didn't really know where he was going next. Obviously, his age as well wasn't on his side. But he's gone to Palace, and I think when Palace have him in their side, they look a lot better defensively. And so I just think his influence at Palace has gone completely under the radar. And I think for me, that's why he almost justifies a spot in this underrated Premier League 11 for me, because like I say, I think he's been fantastic since he moved from Chelsea to Palace on a free. So yeah, Cahill in there. Alongside him, now this one's going to shock a lot of people, so I'm ready for it. This particular centre half has gone completely under the radar for a number of years, and I've gone with Ben Mee.
Oh,
I've gone with Ben Mee. Now, the reason I've gone with Ben Mee is because he has had a lot of defensive partners in his time in the Premier League. Obviously, I know when he sort of came to Burnley, he was predominantly played at left back. And I think it was only until the established centre-half pairing they had at the time started to break up that he almost got his spot at centre-half. But if I look at who he's had alongside him, he's had like Michael Duff, who's now retired, but did very well alongside him. He's had Michael Keane. I don't think there's any coincidence that when Keane left and went to Everton, Keane's form initially, he struggled big time, Michael Keane. He's had Tarkowski in there alongside him as well. And obviously they've built up a solid partnership. And I must say that Tarkowski was very, very close to getting into my team for that relationship with Ben Mee as well. But I just think the way he organises his back line, Ben Mee has been brilliant. Obviously taken on the captain's mantra since Tom Heaton left Burnley, and I just think that Ben Mee has been brilliant. I know Burnley get a lot of bad press for the style of football that they play, but do you know what? It's effective, and actually I don't see too many strikers that really give Ben Mee a tough time. If they're putting crosses in towards the box, 9 times out of 10 he's probably going to get his head on it. So first and foremost, he does his job as a defender, which is to defend, and then he'll look to play. I think he's quite good as well at bringing the ball out and finding a good pass. Would I say England call up? Maybe not now, but I think left-footed centre-backs are a rarity. So yeah, I think perhaps maybe in and around the England squad, maybe, but I think he's a very, very steady club player, Ben Mee, and has been very, very underrated in the Premier League sense. And I think it's because of the way that Burnley play, nobody really takes too much notice of it. So yeah, Ben Mee for me. Yeah, Ben Mee for me at centre half. Left back to complete me back four. Now I've got again a choice of a couple. This is going to be difficult. I'm going to go with this particular player. He's impressed me a lot over the last couple of seasons, and that's Jamal Lewis at Newcastle. I am a massive fan of Jamal Lewis. I thought he was brilliant for Norwich in their championship season before they came up. He came into the Premier League and it looked like he'd played there for ages. And it's a shame really that Max Aarons isn't in the Premier League, because I think he would have been very, very close to getting in this team, because I mean, I love the pair of them as a fullback duo. I think Lewis has got a lot going for him. You know, he can get forward, but I think he can defend quite well as well. Can play as a left back or as a wing back. I think we've seen him a lot playing more as a wing back for Newcastle since he's gone there. But yeah, I'm a massive fan of Jamal Lewis. Northern Ireland international as well, so he's got that experience of playing on a big stage. And yeah, I really, really like Jamal Lewis. I'm a massive fan of his, and I was actually hoping that Tottenham would sign him, because I think he's a really good player, and age is on his side as well, still fairly young, so a lot of development in there. And when Liverpool were linked with him in the last transfer window, it didn't surprise me one bit because of how he performed in the Premier League last season. So yeah, Jamal Lewis is in there for me.
Cool.
Right, midfield 3. This is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Because I've got some options in here.
I'm excited.
I've got some good options. Do you know what? I'm going to put this player in. And I'm going to put this player in because I genuinely believe he is underappreciated by majority of people, including his own fan base. And that's Harry Winks.
Ooh!
Harry Winks, I think, is probably one of the most underrated footballers in the league. If he was playing for United, City, Liverpool in the Premier League, I think we'd all say what a footballer he is, and things like that. I think Winks has got that similar thing to what Michael Carrick had, in the sense that, you know, you're a bit like, well, what does he actually do? Kind of like, he's not one that necessarily is going to go around nailing people and breaking up play left, right, and centre every 5 minutes. But then he's not one that scores goals either. But I think with Winks, he can spot a pass. Like his vision is ridiculous, and his passing range is getting better and better and better all the time. And I just think he's massively underappreciated. I think he's been a massive scapegoat for Tottenham fans over recent times, because again, they just go, what does he do? It's quite simple. He keeps the ball, he keeps the team ticking over, in the same mould to Michael Carrick. And I think he's going to be one of those where, again, like if he was Spanish, Italian, French, Dutch, you know, Portuguese, any other nationality, again, we'd all be saying what a fantastic footballer. And why don't we, as England, produce players like that? Yeah, we've got one, and we're almost sort of disregarding him and throwing him away because we would rather someone else.
Yeah.
But I think, again, it's a big compliment to Winks in the sense that hasn't been playing a lot, especially this season for Tottenham, but is very, very highly rated by the people at England. And I think it is because he's something completely different. He is a player that wants to get on the ball, dictate play, make things happen, and stuff like that. So yeah, Harry Winks for me is in there, and a player as well that I really, really like as well. So yeah, Harry Winks. Shout out to Douglas Luiz as well at Aston Villa.
Really?
I think he's been underrated. I think the job that he does at Villa goes under the radar. And I think without Douglas Luiz, I think Villa would probably struggle, because he's that defensive anchor in that midfield. He allows the likes of Grealish and especially this season Ross Barkley to go and do their stuff. But yeah, I do quite like Douglas Luiz as well. I was actually a bit surprised that Villa paid that much for him in the first instance from Man City. But yeah, I think he's done a really, really good job since going in at Villa. And it's definitely something that they needed at that time. No wonder why they got him. And yeah, Douglas Luiz was a strong consideration for me in there.
And he can score some well.
He
He's got a
can.
good bang.
He can. He's a good player, Douglas Luiz. And like you mentioned before about that Latin grit, I think he's got that on lock as well. And if anybody else wants further proof of Latin grit, just check out Eric Lamela at any point whenever he plays. For those that are over 18 and can bet, please put Lamela to be carded anytime he steps on the pitch, because it's more than likely going to happen. Right, my next two. Now, this is where it's going to get really, really tricky. Really, really tricky. Tell you what, I'm going to go for a Brighton double in here. Because these two players, I believe, have gone completely under the radar. So, firstly, Davy Proper at Brighton. He's a player, again, that I really, really like. And was really surprised that when he left PSV, he ended up at Brighton, because I thought, as a player, he was perhaps better than Brighton. That's no disrespect to Brighton.
Yeah.
But obviously, they'd just come up from the Championship at that time. I think his relationship he had with Dale Stephens in that midfield was brilliant. He can get on the ball, again, can spot a pass. And yeah, he's just a player that I really, really like. I think he covers the ground really, really well. I think he can play as a central midfielder or even slightly higher up the pitch as well. So, yeah, I think, Davy Proper deserves a shout in my team, 100%. I think he's so underrated. And his Brighton teammate, now this guy was one of the first names down on my underrated team, and that is Pascal Gross.
Oh, yeah.
The work this guy does for the team is ridiculous. He covers a lot of ground, especially in attacking areas. And yeah, I think he's also got really, really good quality on the ball, especially from set pieces. A bit similar to James Ward-Prowse, who again was quite close to getting in my team, but I couldn't just put the justification as set pieces. Prowse, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I really, really like Pascal Gross, because again, he does that dirty side of the game as well, but when he does get on the ball, I think he's got some good quality, and is good to chip in for a goal every now and then as well. So like I say, this could be quite easily a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 with Gross as a number 10. Do want to say again a couple of shout outs. John McGinn at Villa, very, very close, because I think he's been a fantastic player. But I think people are starting now to take notice and rate John McGinn, as he quite rightly should be. And the other guy is Tango Ndombele.
Oh, do you know what was? Oh my gosh, he was so. The only reason I did not put him in my squad is because technically he's way better than any of the he was so close. But I think he's already above that rated line. I just think he needs a run of consistent performances and just consistent starts. But you could argue right now that he's better than Paul Pogba.
Can you just say that louder for those at the back, because I don't think they quite heard. But Tanguy Ndombele is a joke, by the way. He's different class. And I will say it for you, for those people that didn't hear, he is better than Paul Pogba. That is a dialogue and a conversation that I am ready to have. So anybody wants to at me on it, feel free. He is the way he just dances past people is so reminiscent of the greatest of all time, Moussa Dembele. It's just so reminiscent. And actually, I think his vision is criminally underrated. He can thread a pass through the eye of a needle. And yeah, I've just absolutely loved watching him over these last 18 months. I know he's been in and out of the Tottenham side and only recently sort of established himself in it, but he's just been fantastic. A real powerhouse in that midfield as well. And I just love watching Tanguy Ndombele. He just gives me vibes on when watching him. The stuff that he can do as well is just it's almost a similar. He's in a similar mold to Dembele in the sense that how can one player be so strong, like in terms of holding people off the ball, but have like ballerina-like feet at the same time? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up.
I've got a question.
Go for it.
Is he one of your best technically gifted players since Adel Taarabt?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't think he's as silky as Adele. Don't think he's as silky, but he can do what Adel Taarabt does. I just think he's a bit more subtle with it in terms of like the nutmegs and things like that. I just think he's a bit more subtle with it. But I think Ndombele probably offers a little bit more than Taarabt in terms of strength on the ball and stuff like that. But then if you got Adel Taarabt, you just build a team around Adel Taarabt because, his QPR fans all know he's legend there. So, and he virtually took them up when he was in the Championship. So, I think, and Ndombele was very, very close, but I think Gross has just gone completely under the radar. I don't know if it's because he's perhaps not getting the minutes for Brighton, and even Proper, to be fair. They're not perhaps getting the minutes at Brighton, but those two certainly, when they first came into the Premier League, were a complete breath of fresh air for me.
Yeah.
Right, my front three.
Oh.
Difficult. Very, very difficult. Right, on the right, Eden Hazard 2.0, Daniel Podence. My gosh, what a player. What a player. I saw him a little bit at Olympiacos when they played Tottenham, and spoke to somebody or a couple of people in around me. I just said, he just reminds me of Eden Hazard. The way low centre of gravity, ball manipulation, fairly big backside as well, which he uses to his advantage, and stuff like that. So and then he's come to the Premier League and he's been brilliant. Like, I think there was a lot of raised eyebrows when Wolves were willing to let Cavallero and Helder Costa leave, but he's just come in and it's like, nobody even sort of remembers the fact that Cavallero and Costa were sort of at Wolves and very pivotal to Wolves to get them to where they are now. But I think Podence has just gone on to that and is happy and is almost taking Wolves to that next level a little bit more. I think Daniel Podence is a baller. He causes so many problems because I think he just drifts here, there and everywhere across that front line, and finds little pockets of spaces and, good for a goal as well. So Daniel Podence is in there.
It's a very good shout. Oh, my.
This one was very much a toss of a coin because Alain Saint-Maximin.
No!
So close. So close. But I think people rate Alain Saint-Maximin a lot. So, but I don't think people rate Podence just yet. But Saint-Maximin, again, what a player. He's one that gets you off the edge of onto the edge of your seat, and there's very few players that do that. He's a bright spark in what you would probably argue is a fairly average Newcastle side. I know they've got some decent players, but I think the way that they've played has made them sort of fairly average. St. Maximin's been that bright spark, and I think the Newcastle fans have taken to him really, really well, and he's quite good on social media as well. Is St. Maximin? He has a bit of a laugh and a joke, which I quite like. St. Maximin, very, very close. Right, my number 9. If I could pick a captain of underrated Premier League players, this guy gets it. All ends up. It's Olivier Giroud. The most underrated player, underrated centre forward in the Premier League. No cap, bar none, Olivier Giroud.
Yeah.
I shouldn't really like him because he's played for Arsenal and now he's at Chelsea. Right? And to make it worse, he loves scoring against Tottenham. So really, I should hate him. But I just think the role that he plays, there's very few that have been able to do it and do it well in the Premier League like Giroud does. His hold-up play is probably up there with one of the best that we've seen in the league, and I'm putting him alongside Drogba and in that category,
Wow.
at that level.
Wow.
And I think it's a huge compliment as well, because every player that's played with him says how good he is and how important he is for the team. And I think another huge compliment for Giroud is that Chelsea have brought in centre forwards after him. I know they've had Tammy Abraham back off from loan spells, but Giroud's always come up trumps. They've brought in Timo Werner from Leipzig, who's now getting shifted out to the wing. And Giroud, I believe, is up there with Chelsea, one of Chelsea's top goal scorers this season. So,
Yeah. Especially after the 4 or 5 before he scores in the Champions League as well.
And to still be doing it at his age as well, like, and he's got a trademark goal, if you like, of just near post, flick, bang, that kind of thing. And he was a player that I was so hopeful that Tottenham would sign last January. Was so hopeful that we'd get him, because I think
from us.
When he was at Chelsea, I mean, when he was leaving you guys, I was thinking, okay, yeah. But then there was rumours that he was going to leave Chelsea in January, and we were linked with him, and I was like, yeah, please, 100% every day of the week. I just think he's criminally underrated. Gets a lot of assists. His link-up plays, like coming through like link-up TV. Do you know what I mean? Like he's just so underrated, and a player that I am a massive fan of. So Olivier Giroud down the middle.
Yeah.
Now, last one, left wing.
Uh-oh.
Difficult. Okay, I'm going to go with yet another young lion, Dwight McNeil.
Oh.
At Burnley, I think he's very, very underrated, and I think even in one of the last sort of couple of England squads, there's been players there that necessarily haven't been playing a lot of minutes, but are getting in ahead of Dwight McNeil, who plays when he's fit virtually for Burnley. And I think even Sean Dyche made a little bit of a dig to say, why is he not getting a look in? He's playing consistently, and he's performing consistently as well. A lot of assists, picks up a goal every now and then. Now you said earlier about wingers getting goals and chipping in. I think McNeil does that every now and then, but I think he does it when it's probably like least expected, and it's just like, oh, right, okay, Dwight McNeil scored. So yeah, he's a player that I really, really like. I think he has that capability to go both ways. You can come inside, but I think he's a rarity in the sense that he's a left footer that plays out on the left, and he's happy to go down the outside and put balls into the box. Suits the way Burnley play down to the ground, because they've got the likes of Wood and Barnes in there that will head anything and everything. And actually, on the mention of Ashley Barnes, he was quite close to getting into my team. Same. Because he's a pest to play against. Ashley Barnes, like, he's an absolute pest. If I was a centre half, I'd hate to play against Ashley Barnes, because he's all arms and legs. He's awkward, doesn't give you a moment's peace. And yeah, it's almost one of them. Like, if I see Barnes' name on the team sheet, if Tottenham are playing Burnley, I'm like, oh no, here we go. Because like I say, he's just awkward. But no, going back to Dwight McNeil, I think he's very, very underrated, and I think could potentially be in with an England shout fairly soon, because I think Southgate's always saying that players need to play and they need to be consistent. I think Dwight McNeil since coming into the Burnley side has been just that, and I think he's been a bit of a breath of fresh air as well for Burnley, because he can carry the ball up the pitch. He's willing to take players on instead of just perhaps looking to come inside and pop it off every time.
A bit different to what Burnley are used to. We never see that type of player play for Burnley, to be fair. So when he first came onto the scene, I was very impressed, because if you mention anybody to Burnley, you'd think, okay, long balls, direct, physical. He never thought of anything quite technical in that sense, but he brings that element to the team. And like you said, the way he plays suits, Burnley. So no, that's a good shout, Ryan McNeil.
Also, that was up for consideration was Pedro Neto at Wolves.
Yes. Oh.
And that wasn't just off the back of him tormenting Tottenham the other night. I think Pedro Neto's been brilliant. I think he's one of those that could probably play anywhere across the front line. And yeah, again, can be direct, can almost go both ways. And again, similar to Podence in the sense that, Cavaleiro and Costa left, and it was like, well, who's going to come in and perhaps take their spots? And I think Wolves brought Pedro Neto in for a fair bit of money at the time. Nobody had really heard of him too much. And now he's coming in and he's looking very much at home in the Premier League and is a very, very dangerous player, and a player that you have to keep quiet because he's got really good quality. He's still young as well. So, I think there's every chance that he could break into that Portugal side fairly soon. Similarly to Podence, I think, as well. Couple of players as well who I want to give a shout out to who were close to making my team was Seamus Coleman at right back. Consistent performer over many, many years for Everton. It's quite mad to think he only cost 60 grand as well. One of David Moyes' signings at Everton. So a real club kind of stalwart. And again, consistent performer. I'd say pretty much a 7 out of 10 every week. Very rarely gets roasted by any other winger in the league. So yeah, Seamus Coleman was very, very close. And a player as well who was very, very close, left back wise, was Aaron Creswell.
Creswell, yes.
Again, I think he's had a lot of stick recently from West Ham fans, but listen, for me, he does a job. Again, fairly solid. Don't see too many wingers really take the mick out of him. I know he's played a lot now as a left-sided centre-back, and he's not necessarily the biggest either. So I think he's done really, really well in transitioning into that position. So yeah, I think those guys were very, very close. Again, manager-wise, I did have Ralph. I must admit, I did have Ralph Hasenhüttl. And I think, the job that he's done at Southampton, because not to forget that when he first came in, they were fighting relegation, thanks to Mark Hughes. But they were fighting relegation, and he's turned them now into a side that you don't particularly want to play against.
No.
He's got the high press down to a T, and he's got Southampton going in a really, really good direction. Whilst it seems to be a theme with Southampton, losing their best players all the time. He's lost a lot of good players, but he's had faith and trust not only in his work but the players that have come into the building, and the players he already had in the building to try and make them better. And I think he's done that 100%. So yeah, Ralph was my manager, and now because you've picked him. I'm now.
We can both. I feel like we can both.
Yeah, so I was struggling to think of another manager after you said Ralph. Yeah,
I could do a trade. What's Brian's manager called? Graham Potter, I think.
Graham Potter.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having him because I think he's also underrated as a manager. But we could both have Ralph. I don't see no.
We'll both have him then. We'll both have him. That's fine. Right then, guys, that is it. That rounds up the podcast for today. Obviously, we hope you all enjoyed it. I know that me and Nelson certainly did, going through our teams. So this will be available on YouTube. So make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. This will also be going out on Spotify. So make sure you give it a listen on there. And all that leaves me to do is to thank Nelson for jumping on.
Thank you.
And we hopefully will see you guys soon for another podcast. So take care and see you soon.
Happy New Year.